the mouth and putting the soil in the earth, breaking through the rocks, growing wild and tall till the buds begin to pop. So pack me in a bowl or roll me in a spliff, while you're breaking me down, you can feel your fingers stick.
Welcome to The Smoking Spot, a really good podcast about weed. I'm Ryan Herron in Portland, Oregon.
And I'm Amanda Breeze in Toronto. On this week's episode, we are doing a news roundup from around Canada, the States, and the world. And we're really excited to give you some 2024 updates on the world of cannabis.
Yeah, this is really fun. I know we both kind of for work have to stay more on top of the trends and what kind of international news was happening. But most of my news has been like what is happening here in Portland.
I think following legalization in the States has been the most interesting because it's such extremes in things that are allowed in one state, things that are allowed in a different state. Every single state is different. You know, it's not been federally legalized. And then rules are just like constantly changing, even in states that have set legalization standards. It's like a soap opera.
Well, and if you want to get more granular than that, on the county level, it changes county to county because sometimes they'll opt out and it's still illegal in that county, or sometimes they'll have like a no dispensaries rule. So it's even more wild than you think. And you know what? It's a good time to get into one of my news stories because it's not super fresh news. It's been happening for a couple of years now. And what it is right there on the Vegas Strip, tons of tourists there for like a weekend. They're not super familiar with the rules. They don't know that there can't be a dispensary within 1,500 feet of a casino. They just know, hey, weed is legal here. It smells like weed. I could probably buy a joint and smoke it. Why not? So there are shops all up and down the Strip that are much closer than 1,500 feet to a casino because casinos are everywhere. And they're selling joints and they're selling edibles and they're selling gummies and there's weed leaves on everything. And there's no THC in anything. It's just a fake dispensary. It like 2 years ago, that was a t-shirt shop that would airbrush your face on it for $36. And then they realized that they could scam tourists with hemp gummies. So these have opened up and they've proliferated. They're all over the place.
Oh my gosh. And you were just recently in Vegas. Did you see some of these IRL?
Oh, definitely. And they look a little bit like what I would call a trap shop, you know, like a dispensary that somebody set up. And if it has to get taken down over the weekend, they didn't lose too much money. You know, there's like a couple of glass cases. There's a lot of those hanging racks. And there's a ton of products, including like mostly pre-rolls that are masquerading as weed. And they have names like Canna-Buzz and, you know, like Sleepy Joe and things that you're like, oh, and OG and Skittles. Like they throw like real weed names on all of this stuff as well.
Oh, wow. So that is giving me Europe energy.
Sure.
Because they have these false storefronts. So it looks like a dispensary. And if you peer in through the glass, you may see glass countertops, shelves with bongs, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But nobody works there. The stores are just always empty. But what they've done is put a vending machine in the front that you can buy weed from the vending machine. And you think you're buying real weed, but most of it is not. Exactly the same scenario, but in a vending machine. So nobody's there. And you can just put a few bucks in. I don't know. And they all have the same names, like classic cannabis strain names. I smoked a bunch. I felt like I got a little bit of a buzz, but also it's pretty dry out there for the most part. So it's hard to say.
Yeah, there are plenty of times in my life where I would just smoke a joint of like, I don't know, marshmallow root or some high CBD weed or, you know, something that like wasn't really going to do the trick. But it's like, hey, this is kind of nice. I got a little smoke in my hand, my coffee. But being tricked into thinking you're buying weed always sucks.
Especially in Vegas, because the thing is like, due to the legalization in Nevada and just that whole region, I would think that it was a real joint. I would never suspect otherwise.
And Nevada in general has gotten better, but a few years ago when they had just opened up and there was just a few companies on the market, I had some of the worst edibles in my life. They were literally disgusting. And things have since improved, but the weed is always really dry and taxed. And I mean, you're in like a tourist hotspot. Of course, you're not going to get the best herb unless you know a guy. So, anyways, it's to be expected. And it's just one of the things that people are kind of like, well, the laws are sort of iffy on this thing. And it has created a whole market for fake joints and fake edibles, or we can call them low dose or CBD or hemp, whatever we want to call them. Yeah, so don't get duped. Check weed maps, check Leafly. If they're on there, they're listed, and you have to probably take an Uber out to the spot. That's more like it.
Just to build off of that, this is exactly the argument for legalization. These could very well be synthetics, right? This could be like a THCO scenario where they're taking like hemp flower, spraying it down with something to give you a freaky little buzz. It's basically, THCO is basically like the K2, the spice of 2022, I guess is kind of when it came on the scene.
You're so right about that.
Yeah, and because of these synthetics being technically legal and a real THC being illegal in most states, it's created this huge rise in these synthetic products marketed as cannabis for anyone, including locals, So I think that's actually one of the strongest arguments for creating drug policies, which I'm saying is like an outlaw, but I'm like, we've taken it a little too far with these synthetics, and they could arguably be very dangerous. Like THCO is like paint thinner, essentially.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean they've shown how some of these converted cannabinoids work more like oil in your lungs than
Ugh.
we've got. Let's call it anecdotal evidence of thousands of years of cannabis use where people have had very few ill effects or side effects from it. But when we start getting into the lab and just fucking with it because we have all this hemp we don't know what to do with, and like you said, people want a freaky little buzz, bad things happen. So let's avoid that at all costs. Okay, so interestingly enough, you're talking about some sort of like standardization or federal legalization. Kind of leads me into my next story,
Ooh.
which is kind of scary a little bit. And it's about this group we've been hearing about lately called CPEAR, CPEAR. I couldn't even tell you what they stand for. But it's this big coalition for cannabis policy, which sounds great. And if the correct people we love were behind it, it would be a great thing. But instead, it seems like it's money from the alcohol industry, from the tobacco industry. It seems like Amazon has thrown some money at this thing as well. And so it is federal legalization efforts with the eye of having ultimate control of the market in very few hands. It sucks. They're the bad guys as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, it's giving me like lobbyist vibes.
Oh, that's what it is. And if you go to cpair.org, you're going to see a lot of things that at first glance make a lot of sense. They want standardization, central oversight. They want consolidation in research and education. And all of those things sound great when you realize that only a few people have been granted access to those things. And the standardization is maybe like, okay, something that could be very difficult is if they demanded that cannabis needs to be produced under the same conditions that certain pharmaceutical drugs need to be produced. Okay, right. That could be in an antimicrobial clean room that costs $1 million just to create. And so now we have plants that are being grown like without any connection to the outside world. And very few people can actually put that together. So the weed's not as good. Growers that we'd love to have be growing the weed are no longer allowed to. And, the dispensaries are in a more controlled ecosystem. So anyway, it's the thing that the more I look into it, the more I'm bummed out by it. And it's the sort of lobbying that we really need to keep an eye out for.
So true. Because when I think about that type of environment that you're describing, this sort of clean room, pharmaceutical grade facility, it was an issue that we ran into here in Canada early on because our oversight is done by Health Canada, which is a federal organization, and they oversee the regulations being followed when it comes to cannabis. So they were sending their regulators to growing facilities, but these regulators before legalization were essentially the same people that would go into grocery stores or restaurants
Wow.
looking for mold, looking for dirt, looking for safety violations, health violations. And so when they came into a grow room and they took their gloved finger and swiped a surface and it came up with fucking dirt on it because it's a room with dirt in it, they were denying health and safety standards being met at those facilities because they were not trained in a garden. Like we need like people who know gardening and what's acceptable in a garden agricultural scenario, not what's acceptable in a pharmaceutical scenario. And I think that's extremely problematic. Additionally, there have been so many studies that have shown that the chemical constituents in cannabis are less effective to the point of traumatizing when used in isolation. So those THC pills for cancer patients have insane side effects and do not produce an enjoyable experience and are not as effective as just the whole plant. So anytime weed starts moving into these isolated components and this pharmaceutical approach, I become very concerned with the efficacy and the therapeutic value.
Yeah, without a doubt. If we're getting a lesser product out of the deal, or it's harder for my neighbor who has like the greenest thumb I've ever seen, it's harder for him to put a plant or two in his backyard that's well guarded and protected and fenced, then it's something we just got to big thumbs down, show up, be loud about. I've got two resources for you. They're actually the same resource. The Parabola Center, you can find them on Instagram. And what they're doing is advocating for a legalization policy that's for people, not corporations. That's the byline from them, not me. But they are kind of lobbying for sensical regulation. It always includes home cultivation and small craft licenses and things like that, things that even states have missed out on, where it's like, oh, you can go to the dispensary, but you're still not allowed to grow a few plants at your house. And the woman behind that is Shalene Title. You can easily find her through the Parabola Center. And yeah, I've recently heard a couple of interviews with her after like researching this story. And I feel like she's a great resource and somebody I'm going to follow from here on out.
Oh, the Parabola Center is doing absolutely fantastic work. And these are the types of people we like need on our team
Absolutely.
to continue advocating for the plant, because to legalize but not allow home growing is still so much control and oversight. That's not true legalization. All right, I'm going to feed that into one of my stories of the week.
Yeah, please do.
This is actually a topic that really fucking pisses me off. Like, I don't know why. Well, I do know why, but I shouldn't be as frustrated as I get. Basically, across Canada, there have been a number of arrests and raids against illegal growers and people basically still selling on the black market.
Wow.
I find that distasteful
Mhm.
in legalization, because I don't think that harsh penalties for black market should be continue to be enforced now that it's legal. And I am saying anyone who grows weed should be able to sell it. If I make a loaf of bread and I want to sell it to my neighbor, that's my choice. I file my taxes, right? If you're like a small business, you should be able to do it. And I understand, I really do, why they're trying to cut out the black market. But I hate the way the media portrays it as though it's still 10 years ago. So, Ontario had a large scale raid against cannabis operators, 17 people, and the case finally went through and they were charged.
Huh. Interesting. So are these people, they're getting like heavy sentences for producing cannabis kind of a thing?
Yeah, in this instance, there was a 12-month conditional sentence. And I think that's very aggressive, especially for Canada. I know you're Americans, so that might sound gentle by contrast. Like,
I'm like, oh, they didn't even throw away the key. Okay. All right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one example. Like Quebec had 11 raids, and they found basically like a ton of cannabis and like 4,000 plants, which again, okay, that's a lot. That's not like a little basement bakery scenario.
Yeah. I don't know. Those numbers are always like Okay, are we counting cuts? Are we counting clones? Are we counting just the moms? Or are all those plants in flower? Like, I don't know, man. Plant counts are so hard. I'm thankful that I don't have some sort of regulatory gig, or actually give it to me, because I would say let it go wild, guys. Jungle it up for me. Grow as many as you like. If you think you can fit more in, have at it.
Yeah. That's the thing. And honestly, it sounds like a lot. 4,000 is arguably a number of plants.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. That's what it is. Down the drain. Come on, guys.
Yeah, I just think it's I don't know, I just think it's bullshit. They arrested 3 people in that one. Brantford, Ontario, which is just up the road here, they recently seized, quote, a large amount. What does that even mean? Of cannabis, oil, and hash. Boo. Like, that's odd. And then in Ontario as well, a man in a condo, and this is relatable because I live in a condo, he was actually ordered to pay fines and court costs when his neighbor complained of the odor of cannabis
Ooh, from smoking it?
from growing a plant.
From growing a plant. I'm sure it was the curing that got him. It's like, sorry, I had to hang these couple of plants in my closet.
Yeah. And I just think that's messed up. Like, again, I'm like, it's legal. I feel like that shouldn't fall under the umbrella of things that require wasting the court's time on
Yeah.
this.
If anything, maybe like a noise ordinance, too loud. Here's a ticket. Here's a fine. You know? Like, here you go. Like, this is over the acceptable decibels, my friend. Good work. Here's a badge and a fee.
That is so funny, Ryan. Yeah, it was a noise ordinance complaint.
Okay, all right. Let me get into this very funny viral recess thing, which I'm previously in advertising. I was a copywriter. I had a lot of fun in advertising, but it will suck your soul away faster than the cannabis industry. And there's this great ad, I thought, where everyone is familiar with Recess, the cannabis beverage. It's a CBD cannabis beverage. I think you can get it in Canada as well as in the United States, right? Here, I'm holding this up to Amanda, so you know it's like a cute little like can ironic font. So this is peach ginger recess. It's a hemp and adaptogen infused sparkling water, and this one encourages calm, cool, collected.
Ooh.
Justin Murphy on I'm still gonna call it Twitter, on Twitter, said cannabis is a silent epidemic wreaking havoc on the American family. A friend brought some of these over and I drank 2 around 8 p.m. My body completely shut down and I slept from 9 p.m. until 10 a.m. I slept through Sunday mass. How is this legal with such innocent packaging? And the funny thing about Recess is they have like 2 or 3 milligrams of CBD. So it's not some knock you out juice. And over the weekend, weed nerds and people who can appreciate a couple of milligrams gave this guy 15 million impressions. And I thought, oh, Recess, oh, you did a genius little marketing thing and made this whole thing happen. And then I went down the rabbit hole and I read like way too many of this guy's tweets. And I believe that he is sincere in his like thinking that he got roofied by a couple of milligrams of hemp juice. But yeah, everyone had a complete field day with this thing and had so much fun, just like, digging into this guy and making fun of it and, clapping and celebrating the marketing efforts. But yeah, it was just some dude who just posted a dumb thing that went viral.
Oh my gosh. Well, on one hand, I feel bad for the guy because he obviously thought he was drugged.
Sure, that's a bad feeling for anybody. Yes.
But still, I've had similar drinks in the States and it wouldn't have that effect. I mean, placebo is a hell of a drug, right? So maybe he really needed that CBD. I don't know. Maybe he really needed a nap.
Yeah, you got to catch up on sleep, right? Maybe he just needed an excuse to miss Sunday Mass. And he was like, well, I can tweet this out. My wife will see it. No one at church will be mad at me. But then 15 million impressions later, he's, bummed about the whole thing.
Was the comment section like trolling the guy, or did anyone take his side, or was it like the weed community just being like, the fuck?
Mostly the latter. I mean, Let's be real. Especially, I don't know. My X feed is probably more tuned towards me, so I'm gonna get all the weed love up top. But yeah, it was. Uh, I saw this the other day and I laughed about it, and then I saw that it got like monster impressions. I think fueled by Recess, who's done a lot of like smart marketing in the past and a lot of like good planted stuff, like in the New York Times and things like that. So it led me into reading more about how dry January, which is something I participated in, or damp January, we're going to call it. I had a couple of drinks. It really encouraged sales of cannabis beverages. Now, I don't think we'll really be able to get like a close eye on the real numbers it did, but anecdotally, I read a few things that cannabis beverages went up in January because people were looking at alternatives to alcohol, which I think is really just like a little look into the future. We've already seen that millennials are rejecting alcohol much more than previous generations. So leaning into things like CBD drinks, adaptogenics, cannabinoids, I think those are all fair game and are growing categories for a reason.
Oh, I get that. I really genuinely wish that is a point of regulation that I hate. It's so hard to find drinks like that because even if it's a really low amount of CBD, you still have to buy it through a dispensary here. And it still has to go through the entire process of becoming a product that can even be sold in a dispensary. Whereas, you can go to any corner store and find a CBD drink anywhere in America, literally anywhere. And it's unfortunate because I've been in those situations where you're just like somewhere and you want a nice chill drink, you don't want a soda, you want something else. I go for that drink. That drink was designed for people exactly like me. I would drink those every day. And we just don't have that here. We don't get to enjoy beverages with a little bit of CBD.
I mean, that's too bad. It's while some people are feeling like they got roofied, most people are like you and are happy to just have one of those, before yoga, after work, on a lunch break, like all of these things. Like, uh, I mean, think about these. Okay, you're gonna have to tell me if Toronto is as bad with little like peach ice or cucumber or mojito flavored vapes that seem to be omnipresent around Portland. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Like weed vapes or like
No, no, nicotine vapes. Like I think Elf Bar is kind of the colloquial name that we call all of them, even though there's many brands.
I'm not hip to the vape community.
You're not hip to the Elf Bar. Step up, Amanda. No, they're everywhere. They really are, and I see them for sale. I see them. Everyone smoking or vaping them. I see the trash of them all over in the ditches and everything. And what it is, hey, it's a hit of a small amount of drugs, nicotine, of flavor, cucumber ice. You get a little. You go back to work. You're good, right?
Yeah.
And I won't begrudge anyone who wants that because, hey, my version of that is probably like a THC soda or a dab pen or stepping into the other room and smoking a little tiny joint. So great. The more of those, the better. I just hope we're doing it right,
Interesting. But you're right. I've been to quite a few like little dinners lately where the host has offered like, oh, do you want like a soda or would you like a glass of wine or do you want a cannabis drink? And they're just keeping their fridge stocked with all of the above for people to enjoy because everyone has, a different preference. These days, we're all adults. We live in the future. There's so much selection. Like, it makes sense to me, just to go back to your news, that January is really shown that people are ready to move away from alcohol. And I would say at most of these events, people choose the wheat drinks over the wines.
Yeah. And I mean, especially at an event like that, it's kind of a conversation piece, which sounds a little silly, but when you think about like the success of Liquid Death, which exists to be like an alcohol alternative or something you can hold in your hand, like probably at the bar where people aren't going to be like, what the fuck, man? Why are you drinking water? And the more of those things we have, the more alternatives and options you have to just grab something. And it's a conversation piece that you can say, oh yeah, this thing's got CBD in it. La, la, la. I feel like I'm in a bubble bath, but I'm actually in a dirty bar. Great. More of that, please.
Yeah. For me, I have been thinking about this. I always think about this because I love freaking CBD drinks. I love CBD drinks so much.
Yes.
And I like working in coffee shops,
Mhm.
but I cannot consume more coffee. So like once 2 o'clock hits, I don't want a coffee. I don't want an Americano. I don't want anything. What I would love is a nice little $5 bubbly CBD drink that I can sit in a cafe at my computer and just get some work done as I would with a coffee, but I just don't want the coffee anymore. So I did recently find a juice bar that has happy hour, like $5 juice happy hour. No CBD. It's just a juice bar. But
BYO CBD.
yeah, it's just like it's a nice alternative to sitting in a coffee shop because I really, really don't want the coffee anymore.
Okay, I have conditioned myself to drink, 9 to 11 cups a day, all the way to midnight, not stopping me. But I'm sure, love to take advantage of this little middle hour where, okay, you drink coffee up until noon, then you switch to juice and cannabinoid products. And then if you care to have some alcohol, 5, 6, 7, 9 p.m., go for that. Um, are there any other mind-altering substances we can slip in throughout the day? Yes, but that's just the general productivity routine,
Part of being an adult is not slipping other drugs in throughout the day. For me, that is when I established adulthood was when I stopped eating mushrooms just for funsies around lunchtime. We
Yes.
save these for special occasions.
Well, I have a problem with taking a micro dose that I can't feel. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll just take 2 micro doses. That's a nice amount that I can feel it. And then I'm like, I probably shouldn't drive to the grocery store right now because I am under the influence of a double micro dose. So, you know what? It's a funny place to be where you're like, okay, a little bit of mushrooms is nice. And then you're like, okay, buckle in and get the journal out because we have some thoughts to put down.
That's so funny. I was scrolling through my camera and I found some pictures from a couple years ago that was just zoomed images of grass. Like my phone zoomed in on grass, and that afternoon well spent.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah. You know what? An afternoon with one blade of grass could be revelatory. Honestly, I truly believe that.
I was experiencing a bug's eye view, so I was trying to capture the moment, because it was obviously very profound. Yeah. Anyway, all
Yeah.
right. I got some global news here.
Okay. Yeah. Hit me with what you have because I have one last thing that I want to talk about, and it's a little bit of like a bummer. So we'll kind of like do that at the end, and then
Oh, I love that. Let's lean into the shit stories.
lean into
Okay,
the
so
bummers. Yeah.
this one's like a mixed bag a little bit because in international news, Germany is positioned to potentially legalize by April of this year. And so I don't know too much about Germany's systems of governance, how they create new laws, how things like that pass. But I assume it's comparable to most democratic nations. It's going to go through a series of processes and whatnot, make its way up to the top, and then it goes through. And so it's been making its way through the courts up to this final decision that they genuinely believe will happen in April. Now, the thing is, part of what is pushing this legislation forward is lobbyist groups.
Mm-hmm.
Before I get into the lobbyist groups, I just want to highlight a couple of things that Germany is talking about, which is that they want to raise the possession limits, completely eliminate jail time for exceeding possession limits.
Wow.
I really respect that. And they also want to establish like different pilot programs for commercial sales that basically is going to help position the EU overall to roll out kind of this cannabis legislature, right? Like all these countries are so small and connected. So it makes sense that they're trying to set up something that works for everyone. So one of the issues that they're also trying to focus on is the illicit market.
Mm-hmm.
An illicit market exists everywhere. That's why this legalization conversation is just so insane. But anyway, they're trying to obviously eliminate the black market. And basically what they're calling this is a new era and a new progressive drug policy for Germany. And there's this amazing quote that I picked up from one of the articles that just came out about it, which is that, quote, the era of dysfunctional paradigm of forbid and punish is coming to an end in our country. That is so succinct because that really sums up cannabis to this point. Forbid and punish.
Yes, which doesn't work. It doesn't even work a little bit. What it does is separate people from their families and like make people destitute. It's ridiculous. I'm so glad Germany has been trying for, I want to say 2 or 3 years now, really championing Europe's legalization efforts. You know, the Netherlands has had weed shops for forever. You just have to go and like give them the secret knock and they'll slip you the menu. Germany, on the other hand, it hasn't been super easy to get weed there. I mean, you know, just like anywhere else, you just know a guy. So it's cool that they're putting so much effort in. They really were starting with like, hey, let's have dispensaries. Let's do like a United States model, like Delhi style, like really something that looked great. And then I believe you said the EU is big thumbs down energy at all of this. So this is their kind of like iterated version throughout the years that is more focused on, I think, home cultivation and clubs, kind of like Spain has. So it would still be more of private efforts, but something that would still be accessible to like Amanda or I if we went out there and we're in Berlin for a month and really wanted to get our hands on some local weed.
Yes. I'm very interested to see kind of what happens at the end of this long process. I mean, obviously, we're moving towards legalization. I like that they're moving away from the North American approach. I like that they're not following how we rolled it out here, how America treats cannabis still is basically an illegal thing. So I'm actually really stoked on the direction that they're moving in. But if it does go through, they will become a destination for cannabis, which positions Canada poorly in the cannabis tourism market for a few reasons. One, Germany is extremely progressive when it comes to things that Canada boasts being progressive about. So, like, this is a very safe country for LGBTQ people. This is a very multicultural nation. So, like, lots of different people are welcome here at any time. It's a safe place to visit. You know, we have fairly strict gun laws. And then you look at Germany, they're basically offering, like, Berlin is queer as fuck. Like, Berlin is a place you would want to go. But on top of that, it's affordable. A coffee in Berlin is €1. A coffee in Toronto is $6. So why would you come here when you could do the same thing there and it's just as safe but more affordable to explore? So people have been saying it for years. Canadian cannabis tourism is so fucked when other nations open up because we have nothing to offer except selling weed, which again, you could buy anywhere in the world. So that'll be interesting. Now, the downside of this whole story is a lot of what's pushing this legislation are Canadian cannabis corporations, and the list of the brands most likely to benefit from Germany are the following: Tilray, Curaleaf, Kronos, Organigram, and Aurora. These are big names in Canadian cannabis.
Those are the biggest names in Canadian cannabis.
Now, lest we forget, Curaleaf in 2022 sold droppers of CBD oil to customers that contained undisclosed amounts of THC, and a man literally died from complications after ingesting their, quote, CBD drops. There's one death for Curaleaf. So
the closet for skeletons at Curaleaf is all the way full, and they have had to move it into a storage facility. Curaleaf and Select, which started in Oregon, have had a long history here. It's one of those like rabbit holes that it's like, how deep would you like to go down it? So it's not great that they have turned into this like gigantic, powerful force, even internationally. Canada has been exporting drugs for many years, especially things that like you don't have access to. And we might have some stories coming up on that in the future.
yes.
We won't dig into that too much here, but so it's really interesting to hear that the companies that are going to benefit from Europe legalizing are so close to home.
I want to name and shame a couple others here that are on that list because I completely agree.
The whole reason we started this podcast.
So Tilray, also on the list, just came out an article less than a month ago. They reported a net loss of $46.2 million in the last quarter.
Oh,
So 46.2 milli, oopsies, loss.
sorry.
How, please don't go to Germany, Tilray. Stay home.
Yeah.
ruin things somewhere else.
You know what? If they want to like enrich themselves while pouring money and salty pesticides down the drain, then can we maybe just like catch the pesticides and let them continue to burn through cash?
Oh, let's go on to the topic of pesticides. So Organigram, also on the list, they're in an active lawsuit right now because of their mislabeling of their products as organic and being sold to medical patients. So the patients were literally buying them for medical reasons. They were supposed to be organic, free from pesticides. And there is an active lawsuit because a woman in Halifax, I think, was violently ill, and had severe and adverse health consequences due to the mislabeling of their products, which ended up being recalled in a series of multiple recalls that didn't just happen one time. They weren't like, oops, this one time. This was many batches sent out at different times, and then later again at different times realizing they had to recall them. So this has been ongoing since 2017 of mislabeled organic products and extremely, extremely high testing harmful pesticides in their medical grade products. Shame.
Yeah, shame. And as much as I hate more regulation when companies are able to do their own pesticide testing, their own microbial testing or whatever, we see this type of stuff where it's like, oops, we didn't know that lots 1 through 106,000 were all contaminated. We tested one lot and it was all good. And yeah, let's move on from that. So it's really wild that you can't even necessarily trust the things that are marked as like, hey, this has been vetted to be organic, or the company at least says it is, and we should be able to trust that. It's for many years now, I have been a big champion of legal recreational cannabis, because I have seen people setting off bug bombs at other grows on the black market. And I think, that's awful. And that's not the ideal situation we want to be in. But more and more lately, the ideal situation looks more like the old man on the hill who's kind of keeping to himself and growing for himself and his friends. So, get to know your neighbors, I guess. And mostly if you live in a legal area, find like the rec farms that you can totally jive with and reach out and ask them questions and keep doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually very reminiscent of the eye drops story you told me a few weeks ago on the podcast.
Yeah, it still haunts me. Yeah.
Bro, it haunts me too.
Yeah.
Just a quick recap for our listeners, and jump in if I'm messing up the details. But basically, a big eye drop company had contaminated products. Did it cause death? Am I exaggerating?
Yeah, no, you're totally right. These it was a private label manufacturer of eye drops,
Right.
And they had antibody resistant.
Oh yes.
Bacteria in them, and people lost eyes, people lost their lives. Big tear, and you're tearing off the little like safety seal on something. You're like, okay, this can go in my eyeball, but no, like better not.
I'm telling you, that story messed me up. And like, yeah, I really don't want bad things to happen to our brothers and sisters smoking pot in freaking Germany. I don't want our German canna fam to suffer the consequences of the shitty corporations that we have in freaking North America. And I really doubt there will be, just based on how Europe treats food, banning Monsanto, banning GMOs from a lot of countries, how they treat that type of agricultural product. I believe they're going to actually set a standard. But again, with all these lobbyist groups.
Yeah. Well, do we see French weed farmers driving tractors through like the Athena salt fertilizer headquarters? Maybe. I want to smoke that weed. Let like EU lighten up. Let people grow some weed. And the silver lining is that since Germany is kind of leaning towards where we see Spain living right now, we're going to see clubs which already fosters a competitive atmosphere. Oh, that's your weed. Well, this is my weed. Oh, that's your hash. My hash is this. Great. We want that. We want things to be as competitive as possible as far as egos are concerned, because that's how we're going to get the best weed and people dedicating their energy to those things. And like Spain is right now, where everyone sees their neighbor's lights go on for 12 hours every day and they just don't say anything about it. Maybe we get that in Germany as well, where it's like, oh yeah, I know my neighbor grows weed. I can smell it all the time, but he's a nice guy and I'm not going to bug him about it, even if it's not my thing.
I have a really, really good friend that lives in Spain, and she basically just has, like 10, 15 plants in her backyard. And when it's good, she sells it to dispensaries. It's farmer's market style. You got a beautiful tomato, you can sell it at the farmer's market. You have an ugly tomato, no one's gonna buy it. But
Mhm.
she can sell any of her pot that they will buy at the dispensaries. And I just think that's really what's up. That's how you grassroots up to the top. Whereas instead of starting with millions of dollars or a trust fund or crazy number of investors, she's just a girl who grows weed and they like it, so they buy it.
I like that. And she's not competing against someone who has $46 million to lose.
Exactly.
I mean, you should see my Super Bowl commercial if I had $46 million to lose. I would have the best swag. I would have these 30-pound hoodies that were so thick and luscious and had the best art on them. You couldn't stop yourself from wearing them. And it's hard to compete with people that have that kind of money to throw away for facilities, for trimmers, for ads, for lobbying.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. So as much as I joke about watching these companies like burn through all their dollars, it's the thing that is also putting the mom and pops out of business, because they're like, I just need groceries and I can't lose my grocery money because I'm trying to build a brand from t-shirts and bed-size pillows.
If you had a $46 billion weed company, like, do you have a celebrity? If you could have like any celebrity or any like famous person, is there anyone you'd like recruit?
I'm not huge on celebrity culture, so I just want to go straight for the Met Gala. How many little winks can I get somebody to wear, like a Loud 100 earring that is like dangles to the floor and drags along the red carpet or something? Can I just get a little PR buzz the next day?
That is so funny.
And what are you going to do with your $46 billion weed company? How are you going to let the people know?
Me?
Mhm.
Me. Who else is here? It's just me.
Oh, just me? Oh, in my emerald temple I built with my own hands? Oh, yeah, probably something with that.
You know what? This is a kind of a wild card one, because like on one hand, the business woman in me, the boss bitch is like, Tay, big fan. But on the flip side, I have this really wingnut friend who makes really, really, really amazing art out of trash. And
Okay.
he's like a nihilistic street performer based out of Brooklyn. Right now he's in Thailand. His name is Kalen, and he does like puppet shows using trash.
Okay.
And one time I was watching him perform, and he had found plastic coat hangers in a dumpster and he was just breaking them. That's all he was doing, just breaking them. And I have never been so enthralled in a performance. I was experiencing emotions I didn't even know I had. It was like capitalism and love and beauty and all of these things you want art to do. So I would legitimately have Kaylin do be my guy, be my celebrity. They would never do it, but that's part of the magic.
For $46 million, I can have a design group study his work and reproduce it in a very rip-off fashion where he doesn't get any of the royalties. It'll look almost the same, and everyone will not even know the difference.
Wow, that's very corporate cannabis of you. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm not wearing my orange Sherbinski hoodie, but I could be. Mentally I am.
yeah, that's how you've made it, because that's how you make the 46 billion, stealing nihilistic street puppets. So
Well, you have some conferences coming up, so you have more weed scene things than I do. I'm not going to any Hall of Flowers. I don't have anything going on right now that is coming up. Maybe in March, that remains to be seen. So I feel like I'm a little out of the loop as far as like corporate weed booths and what they're throwing money at and swag. I'm not seeing a lot of that. I know that David Downs, who we had on a few weeks ago, was kind of showing off a Sherbinski espresso cup set. And I thought, well, all right, that's kind of cool.
That's pretty sweet. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
some good expos coming up here. Now that we have sampling, a lot of money is just going to sampling. So the last sort of bigger cannabis event that I went to, no one had freaking lighters. And I swear, Ryan, I
Huh.
only go so that I can save, that $20 every 6 months on lighters. Yeah, I'm running low. So I haven't bought a lighter since legalization. And I
Yes.
actually had to buy one because no one's doing swag. Everyone's throwing all their money into sampling right now. So yeah, it's been a nice decline in, you know, producing trash, basically. It's slowed down, but Can Expo is coming up in March. March 22nd. I think that's like the next big one. And that's what we talked about last week. That's where the literary showcase would be. But I do want to add to our little news report this week that Cheechable, who we love, currently has an open call for submissions. And so I wanted to like throw that out there. The deadline is February 15th. So it's coming in hot. It's like industry stories, fiction, nonfiction, poetry, art, graphic design, photography. There's a whole list. You could check out their website, cheechable.com. And it's like a really awesome alt. I don't want to say anarchist because I don't want to assume, but it gives me like
No, it has anarchist vibes. Like it's very like of zine culture, but it's professionally produced and bound and printed by our friend Alicia and other folks at Teachable. It is such a cool
it's so
publication.
cool, right?
Yeah, yeah. It always has super killer art and photography and writing in it, and the writing is essays and poetry and like Alicia curates it with a really keen eye, but also accepts like a breadth of stuff.
Yes.
So yeah, I highly suggest you go check out. I think it's just
Yeah.
Teachable, maybe Teachable Sesh.
Teachable.com. I have it
Yeah,
open because I'm thinking about sending something. I just haven't had a chance to sit down. But also, the quality of work is fantastic. The writing is really amazing. And I think, was it the last one? They did a whole series on radical like accounting. And this feature of a group that teaches people like anyone can do accounting. Here's how. The history of products. Yeah, it's just such a great. So if you're not inclined to do submissions, at least read it. It's fantastic.
yeah, yes, and it's I think the older issues are like 15 or $25. So go on there and buy like two or three of them, and she'll ship those out. And they're just the perfect thing to have kicking around on your coffee table, or if you're a bathroom book type of person, go ahead and throw it in there.
Yeah, I took one
Uh,
of the I had a digital copy and I just kept it open on my computer and just slowly picked away at it over a couple of weeks, right? Like anytime I was kind of killing time, I just read another article and it was just really, yeah, I couldn't put it down in the digital sense. I kept the tab open.
well, hey, good shouting them out and perfect timing while they're getting their next publication together. I know we have like a lot of readers and people who have interesting stories to tell listening to the podcast. So appreciate that.
So what's your like sad world story you want to end with?
You know what? It is a sad world story. There's a gentleman in the cannabis community named Nicholas, and or Nika T, as you might know him on Instagram or Overgrow or any of the other weed things he's been on. He is largely responsible for popularizing solventless hash culture. Like he even admits, he's like, "Look, I'm not the guy who created this. People have been separating resin glands for thousands of years." But I'm the guy that like thought a lot about it and put a lot of effort into it. And he claims he coined the word solventless. He's like the first one that's like, I think if we froze this material, it would yield better results. And so fresh frozen is largely attributed to him. So, you know,
Wow.
he's a very humble guy who also does the consulting thing and travels all around teaching hash workshops, helping people set up their hash production, solventless, and I believe only solventless. So this leads him on worldwide trips to go and teach and educate, very much like Frenchy Cannoli had done before he passed away. And when he was in Chile, however you want to pronounce it. I'm a white dude from Oregon. So when he was in Chile, his wife was pulled out of their hotel room and arrested. And she's been in jail for the better part of a month, I believe.
What?
And so there's a big effort to try and get her out and get her home. Cannabis is legal for medical use, and it has been decriminalized. So it feels very punitive to yank her out of her hotel room in the middle of the day and throw her in jail. So, it's another country. Their jail system is quite different than ours. It's very like commissary based, where you can buy a certain amount of food and a certain amount of cigarettes for someone like per day. So I'm going to just encourage anyone who cares about legalization or advocacy to go track down the GoFundMe for Betty. His Instagram is NIKKA__T. He's relatively easy to find because he's kind of a big name. And, he's just doing like any other family person would do. And he's out there, he's like working, he's still teaching hash workshops and trying to put the funds together to, I don't know, get her a legal team, pay off some fines. I'm not exactly sure what the end result is, but bringing his wife home is number one.
That is horrific. That is truly horrific.
And it's a big reminder, like, hey, we're very privileged. Even before full legalization, I can walk down the street with a joint in my hand. I don't even get a dirty look. And it's a nice reminder that often when we travel, that is not the case. So a little reminder to everyone, and also like, hey, let's keep an eye out and possibly even be appreciative of the situation we currently have.
Wow. Now I feel like such a jerk for being like, why don't they have CBD drinks in corner stores? And this woman's literally in prison. Wow, that's really intense. But you know what? It reminds me of our episode on Croatia,
Yes.
which is also decriminalized,
Right.
where we had my friend Sarah come on and talk about her experience being arrested and what she faced, even though she had less than a gram, in a decriminalized country, and what she went through during that process as an American visiting Croatia. She did not end up spending more than a day dealing with the police, but it was still a very excessive show considering their status, and that you would think, again, decriminalizing means be respectful and you'll be fine. But that's not the case.
Well, and I think that's an episode that's worth listening to, because it does show you like how much time is still being wasted with people being harassed over a small amount of this plant. So, very interesting episode today, where we went from like fake weed gummies to real weed consequences and kind of covered everything in between. I think that's fun. We got a nice breadth of news here. Is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap things up?
No, but I love that little tagline. That was fantastic.
Oh, okay. All I had to do was like drink half a gallon of coffee during the episode, and now I'm with it. So stay tuned for the after show.
Oh, the fun fact is how many gulps I have to remove when I'm editing these things.
Gulp.
I could do an hour of just gulps from Ryan.
I want a smash cut of all the sips and gulps. And we should be glad that we're not recording these late at night anymore. You'd have to deal with my clinking of the ice in my cocktail glass.
No, we're doing a nice Wednesday afternoons. No talk of aphrodisiacs this week.
Oh, phew. Big relief. Hopefully everyone could hang in there for that episode last week. And then everyone gets a fat jar of something that smells like violets or conversation hearts for the Valentine's Day.
Exactly. Well, thanks for listening to another episode of The Smoking Spot, everyone. As usual, you can find us on Instagram at @the.smokingspot.
And if you've stuck around this long, rate us 5 stars.
And don't forget to subscribe to get the first updates on future episodes.
Said no matter what kind of pain and anguish life may bring you, oh, smoke it up, hold it down, and don't ever stop. Well, you can always find your smoking spot. Yeah, you can always find your smoking spot.
Hey, Smoking Spot fans. We're here to tell you about the newest launch from Centelligence Projects.
Over the last year, we've created the Cannabis Aroma Wheel. It's a sensory tool designed to help connoisseurs take their knowledge to the next level. So whether you're a budtender, dispensary owner, cultivator, or you just love the smell of weed, you can better appreciate the cannabis in front of you.
Get your copy of the most detailed sensory tool built specifically for the cannabis industry and order your Cannabis Aroma Wheel today at centelligenceproject.com.